What's happening, people? My name is Robbie and today we are reacting to another CNBC Make It video. So, today we are reacting to living on 75k a year in New York City on Millennial money. So I always like these Millennial money videos. It's always interesting to see how people in other parts of the world live, make their money and how they spend their money. This one in particular is quite interesting for me because one, New York City is my favourite city on the planet and I've always said I'd like to live there one day. I just need to make some more money and convince my girlfriend to agree to move to the other side of the world with me. And the other point is this person's living on $75,000 a year, which when we convert it into pounds, it's not a mile off what I'm making a year. So it would be interesting to find out if I would be able to live in New York with the amount of money I'm making just now, and if so, what kind of lifestyle would I need to lead? Would I need to be scrimping and saving? If I wanted to move to Manhattan, which would be pretty cool, then I think I would probably have to scrimp and save because I think the cost of living there is pretty steep. But you know the drill. Before we begin, I'm going to need you to like the video and subscribe if you haven't already. At the minute, only 42.1% of you are subscribed, so if you're part of the 57.9%, click the red button below and we can crack on.
Once you have a child, your life is turned upside down, especially when it's unexpected to be a single mom. And part of my journey in my career and in learning about finances is to be able to show my daughter that she can do anything and to show her that she has control over her finances and over her destiny.
So there's a point already, vastly different, because I'm not a single parent having to live off that money, and I'm especially not a single parent. So already we're living different lifestyles.
My name is Emma Sadler. I'm 29 years old. I make about $75,000 a year, and I live in New York City. I work as a UX designer at a medical startup, and I also work part-time as a shipping coordinator with an ice cream shop here in New York City. Both jobs that I work are remote.
So that's pretty decent. She's making 75 grand a year from home. I would imagine that makes a massive difference being a single parent.
In my UX designer position, I am right now on a probationary period, and so shortly I'll be able to renegotiate my salary. UX designers typically in New York City start at around $80,000 a year, and you can work up to 6 figures. I live in a brownstone on the Upper West Side, and I actually live in my childhood home. So I live with my daughter, who's 9 years old, and I also live with my mother, who is 72 years old. So 3 generations living under one roof. It is a 1-bedroom, so it is a little tight, especially with all of us home, but it's actually been really great during this time period.
So another point is she seems to live with her mum as well, so I presume that she's not paying the full rent. I would think that they split the rent in some way, which obviously means it would be easier to live in New York, and why she's able to live in Manhattan.
This is a picture of me from the orphanage in Russia, and I am 6 months old. I'm adopted from Moscow, Russia, and I was adopted at the age of 1, and I've lived on the Upper West Side ever since in this apartment. My dad was a graphic designer and an artist, and my mother was a paralegal secretary at a law firm. So being adopted all of my life, it was never a shock. My parents were taught by the agency to always tell me that I was adopted ever since I was little. I just remember around the age of 7 asking a few more questions and wanting more details about my adoption. So my second year at FIT, my dad ended up passing away very suddenly. Here's a picture of my father and I, and this picture is one of my favorites because he's comforting me because I ran into a pipe in the sandbox as a little girl. My dad was a stay-at-home dad with me, so. With his passing, I kind of lost the spark for graphic design. And so I ended up pivoting and moving into pastry school. And I was thankful enough that my mom actually paid the huge portion of that school, and I was left with only $3,000 in my name. I pay $400 a month to live in the apartment. The total rent...
$400 a month rent to live in New York City. For reference, at the minute my mortgage is £480 a month, and I don't live in New York City. I don't live in any city. So converting that into pounds, she's paying less than £300 a month to live in New York City, which is absolutely crazy.
Rent is actually $1,400, and that is due to the fact that we are rent stabilized and that this apartment has been in my family since the mid-70s. And so we are getting an unheard of deal now for this.
So the rent's controlled to $1,400 per month. If she's making $75,000 a month, why isn't she at least paying $700 and splitting it down the middle with her mum? I presume her mum's retired. If they're still renting, surely she should split that with her mum.
Apartment, so I'm really grateful that we are able to stay in this neighborhood. I decided to take on also the bill of food for everybody in the household. So I don't just pay for my daughter and I also pay food for my mom. So about a year ago, I ended up getting into minimalism. I realized that I wanted to choose where my money went. So instead of
So she's spending $673 a month on food. That's for the entire household. I suppose that kind of balances it out with the paying less rent. But she says that she's into minimalism. I think that's very easy to be into minimalism if your mum's paying more rent than you are. Of course you're into minimalism if you're still living at your parents when you're making 75 grand a year. So debt repayment, $538 a month. I wonder what that debt is. Savings and investments, $425. If our typical budget is $2,349, that's $28,000 per year. So where's the other $47-ish thousand? Why is that not being put into the savings and investments column? Or paying more rent? It's not even just rent, it's rent and utilities. $400. Something doesn't add up here. I presume there must be a point that gets made further in the video on where the rest of the money is, because there's 47 grand missing here. And I've just noticed it says at the bottom here, her share of a 1-bedroom apartment. So she's living with her mum and her daughter, and they're all in a 1-bedroom apartment. It just isn't adding up for me.
I just throwing money around to buy something I think looks really nice. I'm instead making conscious decisions when I use my money. One of our favorite recipes that we always bake from are spice muffins. And so they're from this very old cookbook. In the cookbook itself, there is actually our bookmark is a picture of myself. And I was around 7 years old in this picture, baking with my mom. So pre-pandemic, my career trajectory was to become a general manager and continue to move up the managerial ladder, maybe even into operations in the food industry. And right as the pandemic hit, everything kind of turned upside down in New York City, and my position was one of the first ones to get cut. It was really tough because I did sit my daughter down to let her know that I was no longer going into work. I also wanted to be very transparent.
Right, okay, so money was tight because she lost her job. So maybe this living situation is temporary then. She's done very well to be making 75 grand a year this soon after losing her job in the food industry. Got to give her credit for that.
Transparent with her when money was very tight. So shortly after I lost my job, it was very clear that the industry I currently worked in at the time, which was the food industry, was getting extremely disrupted. I decided that I needed to look into other opportunities. So the UX bootcamp cost $12,000. It was a big self-investment. The great thing is that they have a 2-year repayment plan with no interest.
So that must be what the debt repayment was on the budget.
So in 2022, in August, I should be completely done with the $12,000.
So fair enough, that debt repayment has been put towards her starting a new career.
A big reason that I pivoted my career was at being a manager in the food industry. You are working around 10 hours a day, on your feet all day. Being a single mom, I wouldn't see much of my daughter. I would leave before she had to go to school. Now I have more flexibility to be home. I have flexibility to have more time with my daughter than I ever did before. As a single mom in New York City, it can be very, very difficult. The great thing about living in New York City, though, is that there are a lot of free things that you can do with your kids, including going to the park, I am also blessed with the fact that I don't have to pay such a hefty rent. I think if I also had to pay the rents in New York City, being a single mom, it would be paycheck to paycheck. It isn't part of her doing good in school though. She doesn't just get the money. She does have to work for it. With that right now, I gave her the option of either having physical money or having it to go towards in-app purchases for the game Roblox that she likes to play.
That is crazy. When I was around her age, my mum and dad would both give me around £5 a week each pocket money, so £40 a month, and that was if I'd behaved at home, had done my jobs around the house, and had been behaving in school and all the other things. I would buy sweets with my pocket money. When I started getting to the end of primary school, I would sometimes buy a cinema ticket with my pocket money. I can't get my head around the fact that children use their pocket money for in-app purchases. I'm showing my age here. I'm only 27 and I'm showing my age.
And so currently she's decided to go with the in-app purchases, but I'm thinking about changing that model structure soon.
Although I'm 27 years old and I make in-app purchases sometimes. I'm a sucker for an in-app purchase. It's very easy to spend 99 pence on something and by the end of the month you've spent £14.
Being a mom during the pandemic, especially a single mom, there have been a lot of ups in terms of having more time with my daughter, but there's also a lot of struggles from the fact that we live in a one-bedroom space and my daughter has to do school online and I have to work online. And so trying to balance those boundaries of work and home life can become blurred. So when the pandemic hit and I lost an income, it really made me realize how much I didn't know about money and budgeting and finances in general. So being home and being someone who just loves to learn and is constantly curious, I decided to start looking into financial literacy.
Oh, 15 grand in credit card debt when she lost her job. 15 grand in debt is relatively manageable in terms of car loans, bank loans, mortgage, things like that. But in credit card debt, at 15 grand, if you're not careful, you're basically just paying the interest off every month.
I do know a chunk of it was because I was trying to keep up with the Joneses in a way of trying to also provide for my daughter all of the experiences, and paying for a child to go and do classes and things can add up really, really quickly, and I wasn't keeping an eye on it. I actually did have around $6,000 in my savings at the time, and realizing that I was going to be so unsure of what was going to be happening, I decided that once my unemployment started to kick in, I was going to take all of that savings to throw down onto my debt.
Emma received $1,000 a week in unemployment benefits, which included the additional $600 a week from New York State. $1,000 a week? $1,000 a week? 52 grand a year in unemployment? This is exactly what I was talking about with New York's cost of living. If I could make £1,000 per week being unemployed, I'd quit my job. I'd take it. Don't do that. Don't quit your job for unemployment benefits. It doesn't make any sense.
After I eliminated my credit card debt, I have been able to build back up my savings, and I currently have $2,600.
$2,600. I mean, great, well done. Any savings is better than zero, and she's paid her credit card off, which is amazing. It's $75,000 per year. It's $6,250 per month. I don't know if this is before tax or after tax, but having around $2,000 in savings, that's like a week and a half's income. So hopefully she's going to bump those numbers up pretty quickly.
So for my daughter, I've decided to max out my Roth IRA. In the near future, I can pull out for certain academic reasons. Since I don't know what she wants to do with her future, it's a better place to put my money. I think it's so much more rare these days to have family living with family. The United States has kind of pushed this independence, and so a lot of people almost feel ashamed to be living at home or living with their family because it makes it seem like you haven't made it. And I'm
maybe perpetuating that. I just believe that if you have the means to do so, you shouldn't be living at your parents' house. Particularly if you've got kids, I think at a certain point you should be flying the nest so to speak. That's just my opinion. When I was in my early 20s, oh my god, I'm so old. When I was in my early 20s, I was saving every penny I could because I was so desperate to move out and get my own place. People are different.
Felt that pressure for a long time, feeling like I had to get out. You know, I'm a single mom, I need to show that I can take care of myself. But at the same time, I've been able to have so many more opportunities because I decided to stay home and live with my mom and, you know, help her out while she also gets to help me out with my daughter.
She's had so many opportunities, but she's only paying $400 a month rent. Even after hearing the circumstances over losing her job and then paying off the credit card debt and all these things, she's still only paying $400 a month in rent. $400 a month where I live in central Scotland is a bargain. She's living in Manhattan. New York's one of the most expensive cities in the world to live in, and Manhattan is the most expensive part of it. She's paying £291 per month. Right, so that's the video over. One thing I will say is, I believe there is 47 grand missing here. So she's living on 75k a year, according to the title, but her budget only added up to around 28,000. So where is the rest of the money? This has confused me. I've got another idea for this video. I'm going to have a quick look through the comments and see if anybody has the same opinion as me, different opinions to me. Could be quite interesting. I love that she's helping her mom and that her mom is helping her with her daughter. That's how it was in the olden days. That's how I'd like things to be. I just feel like the trade-off is massively in her favour. She pays for the food, but gets reduced rent and technically a free babysitter as well. Obviously I understand with the pandemic times are very hard, and the fact that she lost her job at the beginning of the pandemic and then had to find a new one, super difficult, a horrible situation to be in. She's making good money now. It's not the best money in New York, but she's making enough money where she could probably contribute more. Regardless of the situation last year, she could probably contribute more to the rent. But none of these comments seem to be agreeing with my sentiment. Maybe I'm just too harsh. So I'm looking through the comments here and no one has mentioned the difference between the $75,000 a year that it says on the title of the video and the $28,000 budget. No one's mentioned it. Am I missing something here? I'm going to go back onto the budget screen and see if I missed anything. Emma's typical monthly budget. Okay. I've cracked it. Monthly average calculated from annual cost. So over the past year she was making a certain amount of money, then she lost her job and then she got a new job and then another part-time job. So this is her expenses averaged over the whole year. Maybe if it was revisited in a year, the monthly budget would be higher. And maybe she'd be paying more rent to her mum, hopefully. So what have we learned in this video? The most prominent thing I've learned is apparently I'm very harsh. And everyone else in the comments of this video seem to think it's fine with how much she's paying and the fact they're in a one-bedroom apartment and things like that. It doesn't add up in my head. I'm obviously just a bad person. But she seems happy, her mum seems happy, and her daughter seems happy, so who cares at the end of the day? But CNBC make it as a finance channel, and this is a finance channel, and the finances don't add up. What I will say though is, it's very impressive that she lost her job in the food industry and made the decision pretty quickly apparently to move career path completely, which is a scary thing to do. She took a course which can jumpstart her into a new career and it seems to be paying off, so you can't fault her for that. And because she's only just starting and she's on $75,000 a year, soon enough I would think she'd be able to stop doing the part-time work and work just one job and make more money, which ultimately gives her more time with her daughter. The original point that I made at the start of this video was, would I be able to live in New York City based on how much money I make at the minute? Unfortunately for me, I don't have any parents that live in New York who have a rent-controlled apartment. Personally, I wouldn't want to live in a one-bed apartment with my parents. Although if I could live in New York City for £291 a month, I'd consider it. But for the moment, it looks like I'm sticking to Scotland. So I think we'll call it a day on Millennial Money. We have established that I don't want to move to New York City if it means I'm going to have to live in a one-bed apartment with my parents. And I'm a horrible man who has a different opinion to every single person in the comments to this video. So thank you so much for watching. Remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and you can follow me on Instagram at Robbie Corbett _ and you can also find me on Twitch at twitch.tv/Robbie Corbett. I appreciate all the support and I will see you on Friday.